Suddenly, the narcissist is facing a truth they never wanted to admit. You stopped bending, stopped explaining, stopped chasing. Watch closely. This is when the real regret begins, stage by stage, and it's revealing. If you recognize any of these stages in someone in your life, it's proof that your boundaries are working. Pause, reflect, and stay firm, because this is not just their journey, it's your liberation too. When a narcissist first realizes that you are truly done trying, the initial response is often pure shock and disbelief. This is a jarring moment for them because their entire worldview relies on the assumption that people will bend, accommodate, and chase them endlessly. They have grown accustomed to a dynamic where their desires, whims, and manipulations are met with compliance or at least predictable reactions, and suddenly that pattern is broken. They may replay interactions in their mind, trying to identify a mistake, a misunderstanding, or some external factor that explains why you are no longer engaging. This disbelief is not just mild surprise, it can feel like a cognitive rupture for them. They cannot process the idea that someone would simply stop participating in the dynamic on their own terms. Internally, they may experience a sense of vertigo because the control they assumed was theirs by default has vanished. They may test the boundaries subtly at first, sending messages, calling unexpectedly, or attempting indirect engagement, as if probing the limits of your withdrawal. Every failed attempt deepens their confusion and disbelief, and they often oscillate between denial that this is happening and frantic attempts to reverse it. They may even rationalize the situation in ways that preserve their sense of superiority, thinking, "This must be temporary," or "They will come back once they realize I was right," because the idea that their influence is truly diminished is intolerable to them. This stage is marked by heightened attention to details that previously might have seemed insignificant. The timing of your silence, the tone of your last interactions, the absence of expected reactions. They analyze your behavior obsessively, not to understand you, but to figure out how to regain control. This is also the stage where narcissists often feel a rare and uncomfortable vulnerability because their habitual sense of omnipotence is being challenged. They may feel disoriented, unsettled, and even physically tense as their nervous system responds to the sudden disruption of the predictable pattern they relied on for emotional supply. Shock and disbelief are the opening chapter of the narcissist's journey through regret, and it sets the stage for the subsequent stages of denial, anger, and bargaining as they attempt to reconcile their expectations with the reality that you are no longer available to feed their control. After the initial shock and disbelief, the narcissist often moves into a stage of denial and minimization, a psychological maneuver that allows them to avoid fully confronting the reality that you are no longer participating in their manipulations. In this stage, they refuse to acknowledge the permanence of your withdrawal and instead construct narratives that preserve their sense of control. They may convince themselves that your boundaries are temporary, that your silence is just a phase, or that some external circumstance will bring you back into compliance. This denial is rarely gentle or passive. It is an active mental process in which they reinterpret reality to fit their preferred version of events. They might tell themselves that your actions are misinformed, emotional overreactions, or even manipulative attempts to test them, all of which shifts the focus away from their own accountability. Minimization often accompanies this denial as they downplay the significance of your decision to disengage. They may frame it internally as not that serious or just a minor obstacle, even as they continue to feel the growing anxiety of losing influence. Externally, this can manifest as dismissive or trivializing comments, as they attempt to convince themselves and others that your withdrawal is inconsequential. During this stage, they may reach out under the guise of casual interaction, testing the waters to see if the pattern can be restored, all while internally maintaining the illusion that nothing significant has changed. Denial and minimization also serve as a protective mechanism, shielding them from the full weight of vulnerability and loss. They are avoiding the uncomfortable truth that their usual strategies no longer work, and that they cannot control the situation as they once did. Their mind engages in constant justification, creating mental loops of "it's temporary, they'll return," or "I didn't do anything wrong," which prevents them from accepting responsibility or adapting in a healthy way. This stage is critical because it prolongs their agitation and fuels a growing tension between what they believe should happen and the reality they cannot change. The denial and minimization stage sets the foundation for the more outwardly visible expressions of frustration, anger, and attempts at bargaining that follow as they grapple with the destabilizing reality of your withdrawal. Once denial and minimization begin to lose their effectiveness, the narcissist frequently transitions into a stage of anger and blame. This stage is intense and often dramatic, fueled by the frustration of encountering resistance they cannot simply manipulate away. Anger becomes their default response because the predictable compliance they relied on is no longer present, and they feel their authority, control, and ego threatened. They often externalize this frustration, projecting blame onto you or other factors rather than acknowledging their role in the dynamic. This projection serves to protect their fragile self-image while also attempting to reassert dominance. The anger may manifest in a range of behaviors, from overt confrontation and verbal attacks to passive-aggressive tactics designed to unsettle or provoke you. They may attempt to manipulate others into taking sides, subtly undermining your credibility or reputation in the process. Internally, the anger is a chaotic mix of confusion, fear, and a deep sense of loss, all of which is masked by their outward aggression or indignation. They may replay past interactions, exaggerating perceived slights or imagining offenses that reinforce their belief that they are justified in feeling aggrieved. Their sense of entitlement amplifies this, making them believe that your withdrawal is not only unreasonable, but also a personal attack on them. This stage is rarely rational, as logic and reason are subordinated to the emotional need to regain control and restore their sense of superiority. During this period, their agitation can spike unpredictably, creating a volatile environment in which attempts at calm communication are often met with hostility or dismissal. Anger and blame serve both as a defensive shield and a tool to attempt coercion, signaling to you that they are unsettled while simultaneously trying to provoke a reaction that could restore the familiar power dynamic. This stage can be exhausting for anyone observing it because it is relentless and often disproportionate, reflecting the narcissist's internal struggle rather than the reality of the situation. Understanding that this anger is a response to loss of control rather than an accurate reflection of events, is key to maintaining your own boundaries and emotional stability as they navigate this turbulent phase of regret. After anger and blame have been expressed, the narcissist often enters a stage of panic and desperation, a phase marked by intense internal turmoil and frantic attempts to regain the control they have lost. This stage is triggered by the realization that the usual tactics of manipulation, guilt, or charm are no longer effective, and that the predictable cycle of attention and compliance has been disrupted. The narcissist experiences heightened anxiety as their sense of security and superiority is challenged, and they scramble for any means to restore their influence. This desperation is often strategic, as they may meticulously analyze past interactions to identify weaknesses, moments of vulnerability, or overlooked opportunities to intervene. They might attempt sudden contact, seemingly out of the blue, to test whether your disengagement is permanent or conditional. They may also turn to indirect methods, such as involving mutual acquaintances, sending ambiguous messages, or creating situations designed to elicit a reaction, all in the hope of regaining the familiar supply of attention and validation. Internally, the narcissist experiences a surge of fear and uncertainty, as their usual coping mechanisms fail to provide comfort or a sense of control. They may feel a profound sense of disorientation, as the world they assumed was predictable and malleable no longer operates according to their expectations. Physical symptoms of stress, like tension, insomnia, or heightened alertness, can accompany this stage, reflecting the intensity of their inner panic. This stage is also characterized by obsessive thought patterns as they ruminate on the consequences of losing your engagement and the implications for their social standing, self-image, or sense of power. Every failed attempt to provoke a response intensifies their anxiety, leading to a cycle of increasingly desperate strategies. Panic and desperation are revealing because they expose the narcissist's dependence on external validation and their inability to tolerate being without it. This stage underscores the fragility beneath their often confident exterior and highlights the stark contrast between their perceived control and the reality of their vulnerability when faced with your steadfast boundaries. Their panic is not about learning or change. It is about immediate restoration of the supply they have lost, and a frantic search for a way to stabilize a world that suddenly feels out of their grasp. Following the stage of panic and desperation, the narcissist often moves into a phase of bargaining and attempts at reconciliation, a period where they actively try to re-establish connection and regain the influence they have lost. This stage is marked by overt or covert strategies designed to draw you back into the dynamic, often under the guise of change, apology, or emotional vulnerability. They may promise that they will improve, adjust their behavior, or make amends, presenting these offers as genuine attempts at reconciliation. However, these gestures are typically strategic, aimed at testing whether your withdrawal can be reversed and whether they can restore their previous level of control. During this phase, the narcissist may employ a range of tactics, from emotionally charged messages and declarations of remorse to elaborate displays of charm, attention, or flattery, all intended to elicit a response that confirms your availability. They may even attempt to rekindle old patterns by highlighting past memories, shared experiences, or achievements, framing these as evidence of connection and a reason to re-engage. Internally, they are calculating the potential outcomes of each approach, constantly assessing whether their efforts are working and adjusting tactics accordingly. This stage can feel emotionally confusing for those on the receiving end, as the gestures of apparent remorse or change may seem sincere, even as they are carefully crafted manipulations. The narcissist's bargaining is rarely about genuine self-reflection or accountability. It is about regaining the psychological and emotional supply that your withdrawal has interrupted. They may oscillate between pleading, charming, and coercive behaviors, creating a sense of urgency or pressure designed to provoke a reaction. Their attempts at reconciliation often carry an underlying expectation that you will eventually return to the previous dynamic, reinforcing their sense of entitlement and control. The intensity and persistence of this stage demonstrate how deeply narcissists depend on external validation and engagement for their sense of stability. Understanding the nature of their bargaining phase is crucial because it allows you to recognize the difference between manipulative attempts to reclaim influence and authentic change, empowering you to maintain your boundaries without being drawn back into patterns that no longer serve your well-being. This stage is a pivotal point in their journey of regret, reflecting both their desperation and their inability to tolerate a loss of control without attempting strategic intervention. After the bargaining and attempts at reconciliation, the narcissist may enter a stage of internal self-doubt, a phase that is often subtle but deeply unsettling for them. This is the point at which the initial shock, denial, anger, and frantic attempts to regain control begin to collide with the reality that their strategies are ineffective. They start questioning their usual sense of superiority, the certainty with which they believe they could manipulate and dominate others, and the predictability of the dynamics they once controlled so effortlessly. Internally, this self-doubt manifests as a nagging discomfort, a quiet but persistent recognition that their influence over you is gone and that your autonomy is undeniable. They may replay interactions, scrutinize past behaviors, and obsessively analyze your responses, not to understand you in a healthy way, but to identify how and why their control has failed. The narcissist struggles with cognitive dissonance during this stage because their self-concept, rooted in control, entitlement, and invulnerability, clashes with the reality of your withdrawal. They may feel insecure, anxious, or even fearful, emotions that are unfamiliar and uncomfortable for someone who typically relies on external validation to regulate their sense of self. Subtle comparisons to others may arise as they wonder why you chose to disengage with them and not someone else, intensifying their internal questioning. This stage can also trigger a temporary sense of shame or embarrassment, though it is often deflected or buried beneath rationalizations and self-justifications. Despite these internal struggles, the narcissist rarely achieves true self-reflection or empathy. Instead, the self-doubt is directed inward in terms of what went wrong, rather than what can I learn or change. Their mind searches for ways to reconcile their perceived invincibility with the undeniable loss of control, and this tension can create a sense of restlessness or agitation. While this stage is largely internal and invisible to others, it is crucial in understanding the narcissist's trajectory through regret, because it demonstrates that beneath the bluster, charm, and manipulation, there is a fragile ego grappling with the limits of their power. Internal self-doubt is often fleeting, quickly giving way to resentment or attempts at external validation, but it represents a rare moment where their carefully maintained illusions are challenged by reality. After internal self-doubt begins to surface, the narcissist often transitions into a stage of resentment and smoldering frustration, a period where unexpressed anger and lingering disappointment simmer beneath the surface. At this point, they have acknowledged, at least internally, that their attempts to regain control or manipulate you back into the dynamic are failing. This realization does not lead to acceptance or growth. Instead, it fuels a bitter, simmering frustration that can manifest in subtle or indirect ways. The narcissist may begin to ruminate over the perceived injustice of your withdrawal, exaggerating the significance of your choices and framing them as a personal attack rather than recognizing your autonomy. They might project their feelings onto others, telling stories or framing events in ways that cast them as the victim, reinforcing their sense of grievance. This stage is often accompanied by passive-aggressive behaviors, covert manipulation, or attempts at social undermining as they try to regain some semblance of influence without directly confronting the loss of control. Internally, resentment builds as they compare the situation to their expectations, fueling a sense of unfairness and obsession with restoring a balance that no longer exists. They may obsess over what they perceive as your motivations, interpreting your boundaries as intentional provocations, which deepens the intensity of their frustration. This stage can also involve subtle acts of retaliation, like spreading rumors, creating tension in social circles, or undermining your reputation, all aimed at reasserting a sense of power or relevance. Their frustration often becomes a constant undercurrent, shaping their interactions and thought patterns even if they are outwardly calm or composed. Unlike earlier stages, this phase is less about immediate attempts at reconciliation and more about managing the internal discomfort caused by your absence, highlighting their dependence on external validation for emotional equilibrium. The narcissist's smoldering resentment reflects the depth of their investment in control and the extent to which your withdrawal disrupts their worldview. While they may appear detached or indifferent, beneath the surface is a persistent tension that colors their perceptions and behaviors, revealing the lingering grip your boundaries have on their emotional state. This stage is critical because it sets the groundwork for eventual grudging acceptance or strategic recalibration as they continue navigating the consequences of losing access to the supply they once relied on. Eventually, the narcissist reaches a stage of grudging acceptance, a phase where they acknowledge, at least on the surface, that your withdrawal is permanent and their control over you is lost. This acceptance is rarely genuine in the sense of self-reflection or emotional growth. Instead, it is a pragmatic recognition that their previous strategies no longer yield the results they expect. They may adjust their behavior outwardly, acting as though they have moved on or are indifferent. But internally, the recognition of your autonomy can be unsettling and even humiliating. This stage often involves recalibration, where they search for alternative sources of attention, validation, or supply to fill the void left by your disengagement. They may shift focus to other relationships, social circles, or environments where they can maintain a sense of dominance. but the memory of losing influence over you lingers, creating a subtle but persistent tension. The narcissist may also attempt to maintain a semblance of control by monitoring your actions indirectly, observing from a distance to ensure that they remain aware of your life without fully engaging, as if to reassure themselves that their significance is not entirely gone. Internally, this stage can be a mix of resignation, lingering resentment, and strategic adaptation as they navigate the reality that they cannot coerce or manipulate you back into old patterns. While they may present an image of acceptance or detachment,